Hello. At this point, I would normally welcome you to Arsenal Domination, and indeed I will do so. But this is a show going out on two channels. It is going out on Arsenal Domination and on Gooner Gathering. Um, so, whichever of these two channels you are watching this video on, please do go and check out the other channel. Gooner Gathering, one of the three channels to Arsenal, one New York Giants fans that has really supported me and encouraged me in the endeavour for my channel. So please do go and support Lee over at Gooner Gathering. He's a top guy, puts out some really good content and very, very worthy of a like. So, with 40 seconds in, I should get cracking with the main topic for today, which is a review of the 5 years of Mikel Arteta. He has reached 5 years this week in charge of Arsenal. And I think it's a really good opportunity for us to review the good and the bad of Mikel Arteta and what is next. So, Mikel Arteta came in with the club not in a good situation. I don't think there's any denying it. There was years of decline under the great Arsene Wenger. But those years of decline did come with him consistently getting top four and did come with him winning some FA Cups. But there was undoubted decline and acceptance of that was good enough, which it shouldn't be at a club like Arsenal. And Unai Emery came in, a really, really good manager, but as we've seen over the history of football, we saw it at Liverpool at the end of the 80s. We saw it after Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, and we've seen it at Arsenal after Sir Alex Ferguson with big, long, generally successful reigns ending and things being difficult. And Unai Emery undoubtedly found it difficult. And we know he's not a bad manager, but it had to end between him and Arsenal. The players weren't there, the crowd wasn't connected. It had to end. And Arteta came in with Arsenal 10th. And essentially, he had the challenge of rebuilding the club to where it needed to be and where we all wanted it to be. And I think there were two sort of main issues that he had to address there. One was squad development, and the other was generally culture. And I think the two go hand in hand, and it's difficult to disconnect the two from each other. But I'm going to just try and put them into those two brackets now, and I'm going to start with culture. And I think it was undoubtedly rotten. I'd spoken about the fact that the club was happy and accepting of mediocrity. You had players in a couple of camps, generally speaking. You had players like Mesut Ozil, who undoubtedly a great talent, played some really, really top games for Arsenal, but was a player that was probably more interested in Mesut Ozil than he was in anything else that was going on at the club, and it was about Mesut rather than about Arsenal. And that's not necessarily how you build a top team. You may be able to get away with it if you've got absolute top players and everyone else is pulling, but that wasn't the case at Arsenal. And you saw that later with Aubameyang, and you can sort of see how he measured that control. But you also had players that were playing for the money and not the shirt. Not necessarily because they didn't care or weren't trying, but they just weren't good enough, and we overpaid them in the hope that they could relive former glories or were going to be the player we hoped they'd be. Players like, Mustafi or David Luiz, who, just weren't at the required level if you want to win a championship. And ultimately, we've seen those players move on, which sort of goes back to the squad development point that I'm going to come on to in a second. But essentially, it was a cultural thing. Aubameyang, when he was moved on, is the obvious example of Mikel Arteta being ruthless, or Mesut Ozil just not being registered in the squad. Sent a clear message that if you're not going to buy into this new culture, which is going to be about we need to win, we need to do everything we can to win, with an understanding that that was going to take time and that we are one team and that this club is bigger than any one individual. And he showed that ruthlessness. And I think that has massively helped turn over the squad. And I think the real penny drop moment from the squad, and I remember Rob Holding mentioning this, I think it was on the Amazon sort of Prime documentary, what a moment that was and the shock that sent through the club and the squad. And it meant that this management business, and if you weren't going to do it, go and find somewhere else, essentially. And I think the squad now is very, very committed to winning. It doesn't mean it's been successful. That's obviously not the case. We've not won a major trophy since that first season. But you can see the desire and the commitment to win and how much it does seem to hurt the players when they don't. And I think that's a big plus point for Mikel Arteta. The other one is squad development. And I think overall, this has also been a squad that has developed massively under him and has improved, backed by the club, significant investment. to be fair. It's not all Mikel Arteta. This is a joint effort with Edu and the club. Um, and it's not like he had a terrible, terrible squad when he came in. There were some good players like Leno, Bamiyang, Lacazette, and Tierney. Um, but not necessarily enough players in that squad. In fact, not necessarily, no question. Five, six, seven players may be good enough to remain in that squad to win a league. Um, Maybe less when you consider the excellence at the time of Man City and Liverpool. Um, and it needed overhauling, partly because of the culture I spoke about, but partly because it just did. It wasn't good enough. Now, you can argue, well, it was good enough. It won an FA Cup in that first season. I think that's fair. It did win an FA Cup in that first season. But I think that's testament to the fact that the best teams don't always win a cup competition. But secondly, to the pragmatism of the manager and the desire of the players to go and win something in fairness to them. Despite what I spoke about culture, they seemed determined to win anything, win something that year. But we'd seen that with Wenger. That, yeah, brilliant, an FA Cup's good enough. It's not. Um, the overhaul kind of took a few stages. I think the first stage was an attempt to kind of relive the sort of redo what had not worked for Arsenal for a little while. We brought in players like Willian who were not good enough over the hill and try and hope that we could build on that and get us to top four. But I think after that season, it led to a major turnaround and a major realisation within the club from Arteta, Edu, and the club that that wasn't going to work. And we moved on to a second stage, really, which was we're going to buy young, eager, talented players. Um, and we are going to build a side around them, and it's going to take us 2 or 3 years, but we're going to buy players that fit a tactical identity that we want and fit into the culture that Mikel Arteta wanted the club to have, and everyone had to buy into that. And we saw that with players like, Martin Odegaard, White, Saliba coming back from his loans, and the development, in fairness, of Saka and Emil Smith Rowe, arguably players that Arteta must thank for still being at the club after a poor start to the season. They rescued him, definitely. And we saw that sort of develop into a very frenetic season where we went, you know, off like a train, in that first title charge a couple of years ago, which wasn't sustainable, unfortunately. But you saw the fact that he wanted to play football in a certain way with a certain style, and the players fitted that tactical identity and that cultural identity. And you can see how that was successful. And that's now evolved into this control that we see now. Now, I think the answer is, if we want to be truly successful, it's somewhere between the frenetic season of a couple of years ago and the control season of last year. I think that's probably the ideal blueprint. But you can see again how it all fits together. And that has led to progression, bar that Willian season, of year on year improvement. And that's not necessarily easy to do. And I think from that point of view, it has gone well. But it's not been without its issues. And it would be unfair to sort of characterise the entire reign of Arteta as a total and utter success where nothing has gone wrong. There was the Willian season, as I always call it, that was definitely that, didn't go well. But I think he has made mistakes. And I think some of that is inexperience of himself and the team. The season where Conte beat us to fourth and we finished fifth behind Spurs. This season where we fell away in the league, I mean, that didn't shock me. I always thought that was going to happen. But you could see how the inexperience came in there. And I'm not going to fault him or the team for that. But there are things that I think he has to own entirely himself, because it's part of his stubbornness. It's part of who he is. And they tend to fall into two categories for me, which is one, an unwillingness to change when things aren't going well. And we've seen that a little bit this season in the last few weeks. Fulham and Everton in particular sort of demonstrate that. But also how he won't play players when they're out of favour. And that doesn't help Arsenal raise funds, and it doesn't help us sell players highly. Players like Emil Smith Rowe were phased out, and the others, where, do you know what? Yes, you might be wanting to get rid of them, but they still have a role to play. And in some ways, I'm hoping that the use of Gabriel Jesus this season, who clearly doesn't have a future at Arsenal, to me, will kind of demonstrate that he might be changing. But you can temper that very much with the treatment of Kieran Tierney. And I think that really, does suggest that those issues still remain, both of those. And they are definitely two of the bad things that have happened. But overall, really quickly, I think undoubtedly has improved things at Arsenal. I think there was a new culture here, which is one that is determined to win. It's a team that has shown progression year on year, both in terms of the squad development and some of the players that he has signed have not worked. Vieira being the big example of a player he thought he was going to buy that would work, but didn't. Nuno Tavares and players like that being low risk, high reward type players that haven't necessarily worked out. But it has improved year on year. And I think when you look at teams like Villa and Newcastle or Spurs that might have done it for a year, progressed, and then fallen back, it shows how difficult that is to do. And I think that's why, from that point of view, the improvement in the squad shows he has been a success in many ways. However, if he truly wants to be a success, he has to kick on from the building he's done and the undoubted building he's done. He's gone through what I like to call phases, but call them what you like. He's built the club year on year into what it is now, but he has to deliver and he has to get that over the line, and that is now going to be his biggest challenge. And he's left himself work to do this year, but he has to win things if he wants this to really, really be a success when we judge him at the end of this season. And that will be kind of where I will really judge him at the 5 year mark, because that's what he asked for that summer, was 5 years to win things, and that's what he will ultimately be judged on. So to date, successful start, really, really promising, really, really well done for what you've done so far. But it has to count for something, and it's over to you, Mikel, and it's over to you, the players. Please go and deliver. I believe you can. Others do too, but some are doubting it. Go and prove the doubters wrong. Go and deliver trophies, and if you do, I think this club can go further than it is now. I really do. But anyway, Mikel, thank you for the 5 years. Hopefully, we will see a successful period over the coming months. And hopefully, that will start with 3 points at Crystal Palace. So I've been Arsenal Domination. This is going out, as I say, on that channel, but also on Gooner Gathering. Please do like and subscribe, as I said at the start, to both channels. And I will speak to you soon, as I'm sure Lee and others on Gooner Gathering will too. Have a great evening, guys. Cheers. Bye.